Hi everyone, my name's Danny and I'm an educator with a local nonprofit called the Raptor Institute. Now when you hear the word raptor, you might think of the dinosaur, maybe the truck, maybe even the basketball team. But when I say the word raptor, I'm talking about our modern day raptors, and those are going to be things that you think of when you hear the term bird of prey. So those are going to be things like hawks, falcons, eagles, owls, even vultures are considered raptors. Now what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be meeting several different raptors that live here in San Diego, learning a little bit about them, what makes them a raptor, and why they're so important to have here in our communities. Now the birds that you're going to meet are birds that we work with at our organization that have come to us from the wild. So these are wild animals, and they're with us at the Raptor Institute because they were injured in the wild. So all the birds you're going to meet today have some kind of a handicap or permanent disability that prevents them from being able to survive back in the wild on their own. And that's why they're what we call our educational ambassadors. That's why they live in captivity and they're able to come out and do presentations like this and teach the public all about how amazing their species are and why they're so important to have here in San Diego. So if you guys are ready to get started, I'm going to go ahead and bring out our first guest and we'll start learning all about these amazing raptors. All right, everyone, so this is our first raptor guest. Now, this might not be what a lot of you think about when you think of a bird of prey like a hawk or a falcon or an eagle. And that's because normally when we think about birds of prey, we generally think of large animals, like maybe a bald eagle or a red-tailed hawk. But believe it or not, like all animals, raptors come in different shapes and sizes. So they are large raptors like bald eagles, and there are small raptors like this American kestrel. Now this American kestrel isn't a baby, he's a full-grown adult, he's a type of falcon, and he's the smallest falcon that lives right here in San Diego. Now what he's wearing on his head is simply a training tool. It's called a hood. It covers his eyes and keeps it nice and dark inside. When he's wearing that hood, he doesn't get scared by anything else that's going on around him. That just makes it real easy for us to take our birds from their home, put them in a box, put them in the back of our car, and drive them out to schools and parks and libraries to give presentations like the one you guys are seeing right now. Now don't worry, I'm going to take his hood off in just a minute so that you can get a good look at what he looks like. But before I do that, I want to talk about a few things that make this bird a raptor. You're going to be hearing me say that word a lot today, and I want everyone to understand what it means to be a raptor. So to be a raptor, you need to have three things in common. The first thing has to do with what you eat. Now you might be thinking, what is a little bird like this going to eat? Maybe he eats bird seed, which a lot of birds do. Maybe he eats some berries off trees. But believe it or not, guys, raptors don't eat any of that stuff. Raptors are strictly carnivores, and that means they only eat meat or other animals. Now for a small raptor like this, his diet is going to include things like mice, a lot of insects like grasshoppers and dragonflies, a lot of small reptiles like lizards and small snakes, and even, believe it or not, other smaller birds like sparrows and some of the small birds you might see flying around in your backyards. So that's the first key to being a raptor. You've got to be a carnivore. Now the second thing that makes him a raptor is the reason I have to wear this thick leather glove, even though I'm holding such a teeny tiny little bird. Now, the reason for that is because he has incredibly sharp, you guessed it, talons, okay? Those toenails are called talons, and he uses those talons to grab onto and hold onto his prey. So when he's trying to catch a mouse or a grasshopper, he's gonna fly down and he's gonna grab onto it with his feet. He's not gonna grab it with his beak, he's gonna use his feet to grab onto and catch his prey. So those are two things, I promised three. The third thing that makes this little guy a raptor, it's also very sharp, but it's a different part of his body. And yep, if you're thinking beak, you're absolutely right, okay? Raptors have an incredibly sharp hook-shaped beak, which they use to tear apart their food. Because if he catches a nice big mouse, say about that big, do you guys think he's gonna be able to eat that mouse in just one bite? No way, that'd be like us eating a slice of pizza in just one bite whole. Do you think he's gonna fly down to your cafeteria and grab a knife and a fork and cut that mouse up into little pieces? No, because he can't use tools like you and I can. So what he's gonna do is he's gonna use those sharp talons to grip onto that mouse, and he's gonna use that nice sharp beak to rip off pieces that are small enough for him to swallow in just one bite whole. All right, so guys, now that you understand those three things that make a bird a raptor, being a carnivore, having those nice sharp talons, and that really sharp beak, let's go ahead and take his hood off and let's learn a little bit more about the American kestrel. So give me 1 second while I do that and we'll get started. All right, guys, so here he is. Now I'm saying he, and the reason I'm saying he is because this American kestrel is, you guessed it, a male. Now it's really cool with American kestrels because they're one of the few raptor species where the boys and the girls actually look different. Most of our raptors that we have here in San Diego, males and females look identical, but that's not the case with American kestrels. Okay, there are a couple differences, and I'm going to show those to you right now. Now the first difference, and probably the easiest one to notice, is going to be this lovely blue-gray color that you see on his wings. Okay, females don't have that blue-gray color. Their wings are the same reddish-brown that he's got down his back. The other difference is going to be the tail. You all notice that he's got a solid red tail with a nice big black stripe right at the tip. Females also have a red tail, but actually their red tail has several black stripes going all the way up to the base. So those are the two big color differences. Now guys, there's one more difference, and it's actually going to be a difference in size. Okay, I want you guys to think, who do you think would be bigger? Do you think it's going to be the male American kestrel, or do you think it's going to be a female American kestrel? And now I'm going to tell you. Okay, with raptors, not just American kestrels, but with all raptors, it's the opposite of what we normally find in nature. And that means that the female raptors are actually going to be larger than their male counterparts. Now, why do you guys think that might be? Why do you think it'd be important for a female raptor to be larger than the male? Well, there's a couple reasons for it. Okay, one of the reasons is because with raptors, females do the majority of the incubation. So female raptors spend their time sitting on the eggs to keep them warm so they'll hatch. Now, if you're bigger, do you think that you can keep more eggs warm or fewer eggs warm? You're obviously saying more eggs to yourself because that's the correct answer. So being larger, the female raptor can raise more eggs every year, giving their species a better chance at survival. I actually have an American kestrel egg right here to show you. This is an actual American kestrel egg. It's not going to hatch. It wasn't fertilized. So it's just an example of how big their egg is. Now I want you to think, how many eggs do you think a male, like the one standing right here on my hand, could sit on and incubate and keep warm? You might be thinking 2, 3, maybe even 4 eggs. Well, believe it or not, because the female does all the incubation, and she's a decent amount larger than the male, she can actually raise up to 7 of these eggs at one time. Okay, so pretty impressive, an important reason why in the raptor world, the girls are going to be larger than the boys. All right. Now guys, something else that I want you to notice about this American kestrel, it's a really cool trait that he has. That's something that's going to kind of make him unique from other animals. And that's going to be that nice black line that you see right under his eye. Now, it's not unique just to American kestrels, it's actually unique to all falcons. If you remember in the beginning, I mentioned that he's a type of falcon, and all falcons have that nice black line under their eye called a malar stripe. Now, that black line is something that we call an adaptation. It's something that's going to help them survive out in the wild. Now guys, how do you think that black line, having black right under your eye, might help you survive? I'm guessing some of you have probably seen a football game or a baseball game before. Maybe you've noticed a football player or a baseball player with some black paint on their cheek right underneath their eye. Well, believe it or not, they're putting that black paint under their eye because it helps them see with really bright lights or when they're outside under the really bright sun. And that's because black's a dark color. It absorbs sunlight, it doesn't reflect it. And that means if you have black under your eye, it's going to make it a little easier to see by reducing the glare from the sun. And that's going to help these American kestrels and other falcons find their prey. Now the reason falcons have this and other raptors like hawks and eagles don't is because falcons are generally very aerial predators, meaning they like to fly around and actively hunt and search for their food. Now when you're flying around, where are you going to be? You're going to be up in the sky. And when you're up in the sky, there's not a lot of shade up there. It's a really bright environment. So you need that extra eye protection to help you see better in that bright sunlight, giving you a better chance to find your prey. Now you guys might have just noticed he kind of fluffed up his feathers like a little cotton ball. That's just called rousing. It's something that all birds do, and it's kind of a sign of contentment that he's feeling comfortable. He's kind of stretching out, moving his arms or his feathers a little bit to just help him be relaxed. So it's a sign that he's real happy being here and meeting you guys. So guys, I want to tell you one more thing that's really amazing about American kestrels, and this is actually going to be something that's going to help you find them. Because if you remember at the very beginning, I told you that all these raptors that you're going to meet today live right here in San Diego. If you guys come out to the Daly Ranch this weekend, next weekend with your friends, with your family, go for a hike, you've got a really good chance of seeing an American kestrel right here in your backyards. But because he's a small bird, he blends in with all the other small birds we have all around San Diego. But there is one thing that makes American kestrels stand out. It's a really unique thing that very few birds can do, and it's an easy way to spot and identify American kestrels on your own. Now what that is he's an expert at something that we call hovering. And that means that he can flap his wings in a special way to stay in one spot without moving. You might know hummingbirds. You've probably seen hummingbirds before. They're experts at hovering. They hover in front of a flower to drink nectar. We see them doing that all the time. Well, American kestrels, they're not quite as good at it as hummingbirds are, but they can still do it. And if you're out for a walk, you're driving around town with mom and dad, you look out the window and you see a small reddish brown and blue bird flapping its wings forward and backwards, probably about 100 feet up in the sky, maybe over a big open field or a park, you'll know you're looking at an American kestrel because he's the only bird of his shape and size that's able to hover. And he's going to do that when he's hunting. He's going to fly over a field when he sees something like a small mouse that he wants to catch. He's going to stop. He's going to hover over that mouse, get in position, wait for just the right time, and then he's going to drop straight down to try and grab onto that mouse before he escapes. So if you see an American kestrel hovering and you can stop and watch for a little while, there's a great chance you might actually see him hunting and catching his prey. So something to keep your eyes peeled for next time you guys are out and about. Even on your school playground, you might see an American kestrel right there out of the back of your school. Before we finish with our American kestrel and move on to meet our next raptor guest, you might be wondering, well, what's this bird's handicap? Because I did mention at the beginning that all the birds you're going to meet today have some kind of a disability that prevents them from being able to survive out in the wild. Now, unfortunately for this American kestrel, his disability isn't physical. Physically, he's 100% healthy. His disability is actually mental. Now, what happened to him, unfortunately, when he was a young bird, he fell out of the nest. Someone found him on the ground. They picked him up and they thought, oh, a poor little baby bird, I'm going to take him home and take care of him. Now, who thinks that's a good idea? You're right, it's really not a good idea because he's a wild animal. We're not trained to care for wild animals. And guess what, guys? He's making his American kestrel call. So I'm going to pause for a sec so you can hear that. That's one of the vocalizations that American kestrels make. And that's a really easy way to identify these guys. If you hear that sound, it's an alarm call, but they will make it quite a bit out in the wild. You'll know you're listening to an American kestrel. Back to his disability. Because he was found by someone when he was little and brought into their home, and they tried to raise him and care for him, which we know was a bad idea, and also it's illegal to bring wild animals into your home. Because that happened, he didn't get to see his parents and his brothers and sisters, which is going to teach him who he is. All birds learn who they are based on who and what they see in their first month or two of life. Now, normally in the nest, he'd see other American kestrels, and that's how he knows I'm an American kestrel. This is what I look like. This is who I should look for when it's time for me to raise a family and find a mate. And he learns how to hunt and all the things that American kestrels should know how to do in the wild. Now, he missed out on that opportunity because he was in someone's home for a period of time before they finally turned him over to a wildlife rehabilitator. There's that wonderful call again that we are going to listen for. So because he was in someone's home, he didn't learn those skills, and by the time he was brought to a wildlife rehabilitator, he'd already done what we call imprinting, meaning he thinks that he's a person. Now I know, guys, that sounds really strange to us because we know he's not a person. We can see him and tell that he's not a person, but he doesn't know that. We learn who we are based on an identity of ourself. We're taught by our parents. We look in the mirror, we realize this is who I am. But birds learn based on what they see in their first month or two of life. Once that period's over, they're not going to be able to relearn those skills. So even though he's physically healthy, he doesn't have the mental and the social skills to be able to function out in the wild with other American kestrels. All right, guys, so that's it for American kestrel. I've got many more things to tell you, but I've got some other birds that I want to share with you. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to put his hood back on, and then I'm going to put him back in his box so that I can bring out our next guest. All right, so we're going to get back to our little hood. You remember this from earlier, and remember, this is going to keep him calm when we're taking him back home in his little box. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to see if he'll let me put his hood back on. I'm going to tighten it, and he's all set and ready to go home, and we'll go ahead and bring out our next guest.